Hello, Bryon and Jody Calvi. Welcome. We're here at your beautiful farm in Costa Rica, the Farm of Life, and you have an amazing story to tell. You both healed yourself of chronic illness through your diet, and would love to hear your story. So, please.
Well, thank you, Wilco. We're happy to be here too and excited to share our story on Veggie Vibes. I'll tell my story first. I was 18 months old. I said months. I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis as an infant. And so that was a very difficult childhood. Both knees and both ankles had pretty severe arthritis, and I was relatively crippled all through my childhood into my early teens. And I was on adult-grade pharmaceutical drugs for all of it, really up until about age 35. And with those drugs, as people are learning, there's lots of side effects: liver malfunction, kidney malfunction, a lot of GI problems, skin rashes. And then I started developing additional disorders. When I was 13, I had a seizure disorder, and that lasted for about 3 or 4 years. When I was 16, I developed really severe asthma, and with asthma, I could barely function without the inhalers. And with that, I probably had an attack once every 6 weeks, major attack that required a dose of prednisone, which is the steroid, and antibiotics. So I was on antibiotic treatment once every 6 weeks for about a decade, and pretty much consistent prednisone use for more than a decade, because I was also taking prednisone to control the arthritis. One time I kind of went blind for 6 weeks. I had a virus grow on my retina. Very bizarre, just started to have the most bizarre side effects. And one thing I'll speak of later is I went bone on bone in my ankle, and also developed dead bone in my knee. Dead bone is a long-term side effect of prednisone that they don't really tell you. The moon face and the bruising, but they didn't tell me I'd have dead bone. So it was definitely difficult, and I was raised on the Western medical system. I was raised to trust and depend on doctors and drugs, and that's what I was doing for probably the first 28 years of my life. And it wasn't working. It was just more side effects and more problems and this downward spiral. I did, when I was about 28, started toying with alternative medicine, and toying's the wrong word. I dove into alternative medicine, and I did just about everything alternative out there, from hyperbaric chambers to hypnotherapy to, of course, chiropractic and herbal medicines and homeopathic medicines and neuro-emotional techniques and just a litany of stuff. The most effective thing I did was take the mercury out of my mouth. I had 8 fillings, and with each filling that came out, I had an asthma attack. I had to do them slowly, only one at a time, because when they're removed, there's a huge ingestion of mercury. So every time one came out, I had a mercury or asthma episode. But then, when the second to last one came out, I have never had asthma again. And I was walking around with this nebulizer that I used day and night, and the asthma really severely limited what I could do physically in my life, as well as obviously the painful effects of arthritis. So that was hugely liberating, to be free of asthma. And all my friends I made, like in high school, and they see me now, and they can't conceive that I'm asthma-free entirely. You can put me in a smoky room, and I will not have asthma. A lot of the other alternative techniques, they were maybe sustaining me, but I was still taking pharmaceutical drugs, very effective ones, that were working, but I, yet to see what the next side effect would be. But then I was bone on bone. I was about 32, 33 at the time. I could barely make it through the day with, just walking and going to work, and I had a job at a computer, so it wasn't like I was on my feet much, but just getting to the car and going for groceries, and I could barely make it home. I was in so much pain because I was bone on bone in my ankle without any cartilage. There's generally a 4 millimeter layer of cartilage between the bones protecting you. It was just a lot of pain, and I did come across, and it was I don't want to say experimental, but it was not a mainstream approach where this doctor in Florida injected human growth hormone into the ankle joint, and that stimulated my own stem cells to come into the area and generate into cartilage. But I was on crutches for a year doing this treatment, and that's also when I met Bryon. So during this phase of my life, though, I'm doing this treatment. I think I'm doing the blood type diet. I'm type A, so that kind of had me eating vegetarian, really. But before then, I was eating whatever. I was trying to, I would, eliminate wheat for a while, or eliminate dairy for a while, but diet-wise, I'd never really made a huge commitment one way or another. Yeah. I was really just depending on alternative medicine and pharmaceutical medicine. Yeah. But that's when I met Bryon at a holiday party, and
Met me.
he, at that point, well, maybe you want to catch us up in time.
Yeah, it was funny because we were having a great conversation. It was kind of a setup. It was a Christmas party, and a buddy of mine, his friend knew of a friend that knew Jody, and she was going to be at this party, and she was single, and I was really thinking about not going because I knew people would be drinking and this, that, and the other, and this was just my first year of being raw, and I was having a very difficult time hanging out in social settings where people were doing, drinking and partying, because it's something I used to do a lot of, so the temptation was still kind of strong, something I didn't want to do. But I went anyway, because I didn't want to be best friends with my juicer and my Vitamix at that point. So I went, and lo and behold, there across the room I see this girl with crutches on. And I thought, perfect. There's someone that's sick like me. This will be great. What magnetism. And
we were the health misfits.
Yes.
We found each other.
So I went over and started talking to her, and towards the end of the evening, the discussion got on the topic of going on a date, and I very low self-esteem at the time because of all the healing and things that I've gone through. It really took me to the bottom depths of my psyche. It really did, which was a good thing, really, in the long run. But I remember saying, you don't want to go on a date with me. I've got this strange diet. I've adopted this strange lifestyle. I don't know what we would do. I don't know where we would go eat. And she's like, let me guess, what are you, a raw foodist? Okay. And of course my eyes kind of lit up. And I said, well, yes, I've been working with the lifestyle, and it's done fantastic. It's done wonders for my fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I've completely eliminated the diseases. And she had investigated it some as well for her juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. She wasn't all in yet, but we kind of walked into the lifestyle together. Yeah. And when we got married, a year, I jumped ahead a little bit, but a year later we got married.
Engaged.
And
engaged. Later.
2 years later we got married. Our honeymoon, we came here to Costa Rica, completely fell in love with it. And we thought, well, we both have had, these great healing journeys. Why not open up a business that's absolutely beautiful, but also affordable? And because both of us had gone to health centers in the States where it costs ridiculous amounts of money to teach someone to reconnect with nature to heal. Yep. And we thought that was a bit ridiculous. Yep. And so we thought, well, why don't we create a place, in a beautiful place, that's affordable, that anyone can come down and learn how to reconnect with nature to heal, because that's what it's all about. Yep. Yep.
So at the time that I was doing the stem cell treatment, I was basically vegetarian, but I hadn't really picked up raw food. But it was also during this time that I met my husband. So when we were dating and when we were engaged, I learned a great deal from him about raw food, and he started, handing me books to read. And the thing about raw food that was the most difficult for me to get my mind around was like the whole principle behind it is that your body will heal itself. But to me, my body was the enemy. This body had abused me and neglected me since I was an infant. And to believe that I could really, turn it over and trust this body to heal itself, I was definitely incredulous. And so I was a difficult student, shall we say. I really resisted it for quite a while, and I took baby steps moving into raw food. And I was very resistant to let go of kind of the alternative practices and, going to some of my favorite holistic practitioners who, I would feel better working with them, but at the same time I was still very dependent. I had a hard time letting go of the dependency. Yeah. And on drugs too. I remember I was taking Embro, which is an injection tumor necrosis factor drug, but it worked great on the arthritis and I was feeling great. And I tried to do this like 6-month period without it, and I couldn't, and I went back to the medicine, and I really had to get to a place where mentally I felt empowered, that I had all the right information and all the pieces of the puzzle in place and could take the step, take the plunge, shall we say. And at the time, I was also working with a natural hygienic chiropractor in Atlanta. His name was Paul Goldberg, and I had also at this point read all the books, and so I knew what all the pieces of the puzzle were, and it was more than just the diet. My body was so innervated from, at that point, 35 years of pharmaceutical drugs and whatnot, never mind just the way I live my life and the food.